Welcome back to Superbike Intelligence. If you're already smiling, you probably know where this is going. And if you're already rolling your eyes, good. That's exactly why this bike matters. Because the BMW S1000RR isn't just a motorcycle. It's an argument. It's a statement. It's that bike people bring up when a conversation about superbikes gets a little too comfortable and someone decides to throw a grenade into it. You've seen it happen. You're standing around after a ride, helmets on the ground, engines ticking as they cool. Someone casually says, "Yeah, but the S1000RR changed everything." And suddenly the mood shifts. Someone laughs. Someone scoffs. Someone goes quiet. Because this bike doesn't just get ridden, it gets defended. And that alone should tell you something. Before this bike existed, superbikes had personalities that felt inherited. Italian bikes were emotional, dramatic, sometimes fragile, but intoxicating. Japanese bikes were brutally effective, reliable, fast in a way that felt almost invisible. You didn't think about them, you just trusted them. They were tools, very good tools. BMW didn't come from that world. BMW came from a world of touring bikes, shaft drives, heated grips, and riders who cared about getting home as much as getting there fast. And when they announced they were entering the superbike arena, a lot of people didn't take it seriously. I remember that era. The jokes, the disbelief. BMW making a superbike? What's next? Cruise control on a race bike? And then the S1000RR arrived, and suddenly the jokes stopped. Picture this, cold morning, you're in your garage, the bike's been sitting there, slightly intimidating, slightly smug. You thumb the starter. That first cold start doesn't feel like a plea or a promise. It feels like a system booting up. Like something very serious has just come online. And in that moment, whether you love this bike or hate it, you feel it. This isn't trying to charm you. It's not trying to seduce you. It's telling you very calmly, I am ready. That was new. Other superbikes wanted your attention. This one felt like it expected your competence. And that's where the divide started. Some riders love that. Finally, a superbike that didn't feel like it was daring you to survive it. Finally, something that felt brutally fast, but composed. Like it had your back. Like it wasn't waiting to punish a mistake, just quietly correcting it before it became one. Others hated it, and I get why. Because the S1000RR didn't ask you who you were. It didn't care about your ego. It didn't care if you wanted to wrestle with it or tame it or prove something. It just worked. And for riders who believe a superbike should scare you a little, who think fear is part of the romance, that felt wrong, almost disrespectful.
At a traffic light, you can feel it. That moment when you're sitting upright, engine idling smoothly, mirrors steady, nothing shaking, nothing vibrating aggressively. A Ducati next to you might be pulsing with drama, heat radiating up, clutch heavy, sound bouncing off buildings. The BMW just waits, calm, patient, like it already knows what's about to happen. And when the light turns green, it doesn't explode forward in chaos. It executes.
That's the word people don't like. Execute. It sounds cold, it sounds corporate, it sounds German in the most stereotypical way. But execution is exactly what changed the superbike world. Because suddenly, speed wasn't just about bravery or talent, it was about access. The S1000RR made ridiculous performance feel reachable. Not easy, not casual, but possible. It didn't feel like a sacred machine only a handful of gods could unlock. It felt like something that would meet you where you were, and then quietly raise the ceiling. And that terrified a lot of purists, because once one bike does that, everyone has to respond. You think it's a coincidence that electronics became the center of the superbike conversation after this bike? That rider aids stopped being whispered about and started being advertised? That other manufacturers suddenly began talking about confidence, control, intelligence? BMW didn't just build a fast bike, they changed the language. And that's why people still argue about it today. You hear things like, yeah, but it has no soul. And I always find that fascinating. Because what they really mean is it doesn't express emotion the way I expect. But who decided that soul has to look like unpredictability? Who said passion must come with discomfort? There's a different kind of emotion in absolute trust. Think about a long highway stretch at night. Empty road, cool air. Your visor cracked open just enough to smell the asphalt and the trees passing by. On some bikes, that moment feels tense. Like you're riding a wild animal that might bolt if you breathe wrong. On the S1000RR, that moment feels surgical, focused. You're not fighting the bike, you're collaborating with it. You become hyper-aware of your inputs, not because you're afraid, but because everything you do matters. That's intoxicating in its own way, and it created a new kind of rider identity. The S1000RR rider isn't always the loudest. They're not always revving at every stop. They're not trying to prove heritage or lineage. They're usually very comfortable saying, I chose this because it works. And that confidence bothers people, because it challenges the idea that motorcycles must be irrational to be lovable. Now, don't misunderstand me. There are valid criticisms. This bike can feel clinical. It can feel less raw. Some riders want a machine that argues back, that demands compromise, that reminds you it's alive by occasionally misbehaving. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The S1000RR didn't remove emotion from Superbikes. It exposed how much of that emotion was tied to struggle. And once you realize that, you can't unsee it. Group rides are where this bike really messes with people's heads. You've seen it. The BMW doesn't always lead the pack. Sometimes it just sits there, blends in. And then the road opens up, the pace lifts, and suddenly that quiet, almost understated machine is just gone. No drama, no theatrics, just distance. That moment stays with riders, especially the ones who didn't expect it. And that's why loyalty forms so deeply around this bike. Owners don't just like it, they trust it. They defend it not because it's perfect, but because it redefined what perfection could look like. BMW's philosophy here wasn't about heritage or racing romance. It was about competence. About saying, if you're going to push the limits, we'll handle the chaos so you can focus on the ride. That's not less emotional. That's just a different emotion. If you're enjoying this conversation so far, by the way, this is your gentle reminder to tap like, subscribe to SuperBike Intelligence, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I don't want agreement. I want opinions. This channel lives on debates like this, because the S1000RR didn't unite riders by being universally loved. It united them by forcing them to choose a side. And even now, years later, its shadow is everywhere. Every Superbike launched since has had to answer the question it asked. Should speed feel wild, or should it feel controlled? Should the rider adapt to the machine, or should the machine adapt to the rider? There's no correct answer. But there is a reason this bike sits at the center of that question. Late at night, garage door half open, bike sitting there under a single light. The S1000RR doesn't whisper stories of the past. It doesn't hint at racing legends or historic victories. It stares forward, always forward, like it's slightly bored with nostalgia, and that's either incredibly appealing or deeply unsettling. So here's what I'll leave you with. Did the BMW S1000RR change Superbikes forever because it made them better? Or because it made us question what we actually want from them? Is emotion about chaos, or is it about confidence? And when you twist the throttle, do you want to feel like you're surviving the bike or collaborating with it? I'm genuinely curious where you stand. Drop your take in the comments. Agree with me, disagree with me, defend your favorite, challenge mine. That's what this space is for. And as always, ride safe, ride honest, and I'll see you in the next one on Superbike Intelligence.